Hi everybody, welcome to another Broken Meeple Express review. I'm taking a look at Brian Boru, the High King of Ireland today. If you like what you see, please remember to leave a thumbs up and comment on the video. Let me know what you think of the video and the contents. And of course, check out the Patreon campaign if you want to donate $1 or so every month to keep this channel running. So Brian Boru is kind of what I would like to say is an older brother of The King is Dead. This is from Osprey Games, and some of you might not have heard of The King is Dead. It was a small area control game, cube pusher, whatever theme-wise, but you essentially played these cards in order to do actions on a map of England, and you controlled territories, but depending on which way the game went, dictated how the game ended and how point scoring occurred. It was one that I wasn't particularly that interested in, and I was wondering why is everybody calling this like the best game of the year, but I did a review of it. You can check out my video on it, and I thought it was really good. It's still in my collection now. I don't think it's like best of the year. I think that's overhyping it like crazy, but it was a lot better than I thought it was. It was a genuine surprise. So with this one, which kind of feels like an older brother to it, there's definitely, I think, some callbacks to The King is Dead in this one. I was intrigued to see, okay, normally I would have just gone, whatever, this title, this style of artwork, a generic looking sort of like board of area controls, I'm not that interested. But because of The King is Dead, I thought, let's give this one a look and see. So this is an area control game where you are controlling different provinces and cities within Ireland. This is set, Lord knows when, like early medieval times. I have no idea about Irish history, so I don't know who the High King of Ireland was. I don't even know how you pronounce this next tagline on it. Hock Cunning von Ireland? I have no idea. If you're Irish, please instruct me on how you pronounce that. But either way, theme, get over it. There's no theme in this game. It could have been set in any country with any nobility in any timeline, and the game would play out pretty much exactly the same. But what you're doing here is you're controlling these different areas for points, but the main mechanic works by trick taking, which is certainly a combination you don't see very often. And to be honest, recently I've been getting on a bit of a trick taking high. I've been playing games like Diamonds and Macaron and a couple of other ones. No, I played other trick takers, but generally, I'm enjoying the mechanic of trick taking with cards. And so the idea with this is that during each round you will draft a bunch of these cards in 4 different colours: yellow, blue and red to correspond with the cities on the board, but also grey, which is kind of like a wild colour. And they are numbered from, I believe, 1 through to 24, but the idea is that when you've got a few of these in your hand each round, you are going to be leading the trick as normal, but there's a couple of slight differences. You play a card, opponents don't have to follow the suit like normal, but if they don't, they have no chance of winning the trick. There's no trump suit in this, per se. Unless you play the grey one, though. The grey one can potentially trump the suit. But the idea is that you play a card. So let's say I want to win the trick. Well, okay, do I have a higher card than 14 that I've just played here? Fine, I'm going to play my 23. So why would you care about playing like a 6 blue or something and lose the trick? Well, the idea is that depending on who wins and loses the trick, they get to perform different actions with the cards. So if you win the trick, you get to perform the top action. If you lose the trick, you get to perform one of 2 bottom actions on the card. So you've essentially got 3 choices of things that you can potentially do with a card. Now, on a lower value card, because it's harder to win a trick with these, the top action is considerably better than on the higher ones. But then vice versa, the lower actions are better on the high value cards because you often don't lose tricks with those, but if you are losing a trick with a high value card, you're giving up a high value card, so it better be worth it. And aside from this is that you take it in turns to do this. There's one person leading the trick in every round. There's no like, oh, you won the trick, therefore you start the next one. No, it's one person each round, which is different. But you are utilizing these cards to control areas and satisfy the conditions on 4 parts of the board. I can't show the entire board in this photo here, but essentially you have 4 different things to be considered about. Not only are you trying to control areas of the board, but you have a track, which is how you marry off to various people of nobility at the end of each round. You have Vikings that are turning up and basically trying to conquer certain cities. You're trying to do as best you can to repel them. But then you've also got monasteries that you can build, which improve your cities for area control, but also allow you to become the first player who leads the trick each round and chooses what cities you're effectively bidding on. Essentially, you play a card and say, right, I'm going to lead with a yellow because I want to control this yellow right here, over there in Ulade, or whatever you pronounce it. And so if you're the first player, you get to dictate where you're bidding and what you lead the trick with, which can be pretty powerful. It's not to be underestimated. But this carries on for essentially 4 rounds, and you go through, and at the end of the game there'll be some further scoring as to who controlled the various provinces. So you can control them with these tiles by controlling a certain number of cities within a particular area, but at the end of the game these might chop and change, these might shift around to players, and of course they score VP, and of course the person with the most wins as always. So when I say this was like a big brother of The King is Dead, it's that same sort of thing. Like, you're not pushing cubes around in this, you're pushing rings and little discs around, pretty much. It's the same sort of deal. But it's all about, here's a location, here's area control, you want to control different areas, but how the game ends and how you play this game is going to differ for every other player. And it's an interesting one. I like trick taking in general, and I think the mechanic here works. You've got to think when you're drafting these cards, do I want high values? Do I want low values? Am I more interested in controlling red cities? So maybe I want to have a bunch of red cards, particularly if I'm the one who's dictating where we're bidding on. I really want to dictate which colours we're going for. But then maybe I don't care about winning the cities. Maybe I'm gunning for all these things around the side of the board, and therefore, as long as I can perform the lower value actions whenever I want, I'm cool with that, you know. So there's a lot of thought that goes into your decision for these cards, and they're quite varied. Some will get you Viking tokens, some get you the monastery tokens here, some level you up this track, some control a city, some can let you connect cities if they're on a road for money. There's a lot of different things these cards will do, but all in all, pretty interesting and pretty simple. The rulebook is, you know, somewhat large just because the box is large. In fact, the only reason this box is this big is to accommodate this board. If this board was smaller, trust me, this would fit a lot smaller. But you've got a quick reference on the back of the book. There's a fair amount of text. I would have wished maybe there was a little bit less text, but overall there's not a lot of rules to read in here. It's a pretty simple game. You'll be able to pick it up relatively quickly. In terms of how to play it, how to play it well is another story. And this is both a positive and a negative. This definitely rewards more plays, but this also isn't very new gamer friendly. Not in terms of the complexity, but how to actually perform well. A new player, when they look at these cards, is not going to have the foggiest clue what they should be grabbing, what areas they should go for, what they should gun for. It's going to feel completely alien to them. The fact that it's even using trick taking as a method of doing this is going to be pretty alien to a lot of players. So if somebody knows what they're doing and other players don't, they're going to have a significant advantage. It is not helped by the fact that this game does not come with a reference aid. And we know what you're saying. It's like, well, Luke, what's this? This is a round structure reference aid, which granted helps you keep track of how the game flows. What I want from a reference aid, though, is one for these cards, because there isn't one. Now, I don't want every single card explained. I mean, the iconography is clear as day. It's not difficult to understand, so that's easy. But the fact is that these numbers are spread from 1 to 24 across 4 different colors. And it's not that there's a 1 to 24 in yellow and a 1 to 24 in red. It's split. So, for example, I separated out here. Here's the highest card in the set, which I think is a 25 blue, right? 24 is red. 23 is yellow. 22 and 21 and 20 are grey. And then 19, I don't even know where 19 is. 19 is blue and then 18 is red. So it's not exactly linear in terms of how these are split amongst the colours. And you kind of need to know this kind of information. It really does help. All in all, you know, decent trick-taking system. But as I say, it's going to take you a game or two to really get to grips of how you're supposed to do well at it. Now, scores can be pretty tight. You know, this board only goes up to 60 points. You're not necessarily going to lap the board, but you're going to be pretty close to each other. Well, certainly the two who are in the line for winning it are going to be pretty close. You never really understand who's going to win until the very end, which is good. It's a hallmark of a good game. Now, the component quality is, for the most part, decent. This artwork style is not one that I go for, but that's a personal nitpick. If you are a fan of this style of artwork, it is good artwork. I mean, the cover is actually pretty striking, you know, nice selection of colour. Vikings, the monks, the princess, the prince, and like the king himself, and the humans look like humans, you know, the expressions are good. It's just, it's not my style of art. But that's very personal and very subjective. I think if you're into this style, I think you're going to look at this and go, this looks very pretty. And it does. It's colourful and it is a pretty game. I mean, come on. This board is pretty basic. It's fairly abstract, but it's got a UV gloss effect around the country, so it shines in the light. It's got very nice, like, clear color iconography for where everything is. The 4 things around the side are clear as day as to how they work. I mean, people go on about Age of Steam being a looker, and all that is a bunch of green hexes with a track on it. If that is enough for you, then this has to appeal to somebody, okay? And, you know, remember, what was it called? Ethnos? Remember how horrible that board looked? This is not a horrible looking board. This is a very nice looking board. Considering they've made it basically clean and abstracted, essentially, like minimalistic, they've done a pretty good job about making it stand out despite that. The rest of it, though, is very boring tokens and a few rings and basic color discs. I mean, they do the job. The money is bit dire, really. I would have liked some more interesting looking money, but as I say, they kept it relatively cheap. There's not an expensive game. You're getting a pretty decent amount of content for the price tag. I forget exactly how much it is, but it's definitely cheaper than many games out there. And, you know, you get a lot of these tarot-sized cards, which, you know, will only cost you 1 pack of Sleeve King sleeves to sleeve, and I do recommend sleeving these cards, because it's not that they're flimsy. The card stock is a little thin though, so a sleeve would be preferable, but 1 pack of sleeves and you're done and it's sorted. The other things around the board, are they interesting? Yes, because you can play this in multiple different ways. The strategies speak for themselves. Some people could focus entirely on city area control, so I'm really trying to get into multiple different provinces and multiple cities. Great. But then I might be thinking, well, you know what? I don't need that many cities. I'm getting my points from the marriage track, so that I get to marry off to a bit of nobility each round, which gets me points and some free city control, as well as maybe some extra money. The Vikings can lead up to quite a few points if you focus on that, because you don't want to be caught with few Viking tokens, because the other players get to decide one of your cities gets taken over by Vikings, so you can't just ignore it. But then am I going to focus on it? Well, I could do, because then I get these virtue tokens, and the more of those I get, the more points I get from this each round. The monasteries, being the one who dictates where this marker goes on every single trick you lead, can be pretty powerful at the right times. But then the monasteries in general, you can get points for having the monasteries, but also having to ring a monastery around your city means it counts double for area control purposes. So that can be pretty powerful in itself. None of these things around the outskirts of the board can be underestimated, apart from possibly the marriage track. The marriage track, I think, is the weakest of the lot, but it's not to say you could ignore it entirely. I think, you know, actually grabbing 1 or 2 of these things is actually pretty sweet. It does have an interesting endgame condition as well with the Princess of Denmark. Similar to the King is Dead. You remember when the French invaded? If they invaded too much, you had to flip the card and you scored in a very different way. This is similar, but sadly not quite as impactful as that. When you've got the princess, you can either bin her for 4 points, which sounds a bit harsh to do to a princess, frankly, but you can either flip her to military or trade support from the Vikings, the Northmen. And the idea is whichever one you flip it to changes one aspect of the final scoring as to how the Viking-controlled cities apply to the board. So, you know, putting it on the trade thing means that it's better to be in multiple areas, but then putting it on the military side means that they count more for you for controlling single areas. So it's good that that is in the game, and it certainly does make the marriage track on the final round much more important. But I've never really found that this is dictated like someone was going to win or lose a game, really. I mean, at most you're probably getting 3 cities controlled by Vikings. A lot of the times 1 or 2, especially if you manage to repel the whole lot in one round, they won't control the city. So I think this is a nice little addition, but I would have liked it to have had much more impact, like in The King is Dead. But that's a small little gripe. Overall though, this game is really solid. It's another cool game. I mean, yes, it's dry as a bone, and yes, it's using very abstracted mechanics, but I like trick-taking, and I think this idea really does sing well. I just wish it was maybe a bit more new gamer friendly. I mean, I don't know who I can play this with regularly, so I'm going to be teaching it to new people, and I'm always going to have an advantage. Doesn't mean I win every game by far, but still, they're going to be confused as to what to do, whereas I'm going to understand more about how everything works, and I don't really know how you can teach people that in any other better way. So, except that you're probably going to need a few games to learn this well, but once you do, or if you do have a regular group to play this with, I think this is going to sing volumes to you. I think you're going to love this game, and honestly, I think it's solid. Do I like it more than King is Dead? Hard to say. King of Dead is a much shorter game. This one does go on longer. You're definitely talking at least a 60 to 90 minute game with this, whereas King of Dead can be done in 30 minutes if people aren't taking too long. This is definitely, I think, more involved than the King of Dead, but it's along that similar line where you've got an area control game with a weird twist as to how you do the area control, and I think this card system works really well. Just really could have used a reference aid for the card list to make life easier. Is it one that I want to play all the time? No. Is it one that's new gamer friendly? As again, no. I think this still deserves a very solid 8 out of 10 though. I'm giving this a great rating, a seal of endorsement. I think if you are a fan of the King of Dead, I think you're going to like this. If you're a fan of area control and trick taking, I think this is going to speak volumes for you. It does scale pretty well among the player counts. You get a decent amount of cards each, but certainly I think with 4 players the game is going to drag on a little bit longer, but otherwise I think it scales pretty nicely. And overall, it's a really solid game that I'm going to hang on to on my Calyx Square that's devoted to a lot of other stuff from Osprey Games. As I say, they're coming into their own recently. They haven't started off that well with me, but the latest games have really actually started to come through and really appeal to me, ever since the days of Cryptid and that, you know. So, speaking of which, I'm looking forward to their next one, the 2-player version of Cryptid, you know, that's coming out later this year. So, yeah, good on your Osprey Games. You're continuing to do consistently well. So that's Brian Boru for me. If you like what you see, then please remember to leave a thumbs up and comment on the video. Did you love The King is Dead? Does this appeal to you? Are you a trick-taking fan? What's your favourite trick-taking game? Which one would you recommend to me to play out of ones that you may not have seen on my channel? Until next time, you can check out more content on the show, like my recent review of Dixit Stellar, or another recent review of The Loop from Pandasaurus Games. Until next time, take care, and remember as always, it's only a game. Bye for now.